Hey guys, this is Hazard 502, and we're going to be doing a long-term review of my Condor low drag fixed blade knife. I've had this knife for about a year and a half, and out of all of my cutting tools, this is probably the most use out of any of them. And when I mean most use, I don't mean just fixed blades. I mean fixed blades, folding knives, hatchet, axes. This has gotten the most use out of anything that I've had to date, and I feel like after a year and a half I have a really good idea of how it handles, how it performs, and whether or not this is something that I recommend for you. So let's get into the review. Alright, let's get into the knife construction. You can see that there is some schmooze on my blade. It has gone through a lot of use. I haven't really gone through and polished it up or anything like that, but just shows that it's been well loved. So the blade itself is made out of 1075 high carbon steel. It is a full flat grind with a convex cutting edge. It has a fairly stout blade tip, and it has a really nice sharpening tool in the ricasso there, so you can get right to the edge of the blade, close to the handle. The handle material is made out of a natural canvas micarta. It is a full tank construction. It does have 3 hollow pins, as you can see, to connect the blade and the handle together. It does have forward notches for a pinch grip, and it has a finger guard built into the handle where the blade and the handle meet together. Alright, the dimensions of this knife. The blade length is 6.5 inches long. The height of the blade is 1.6 inches, so a nice tall blade. And the blade stock itself is 4 millimeters thick. The handle has a full handle length of 5 inches. A grip area between the finger guard and the beak on the pommel is 4.5 inches. The highest area of the handle is 1.1 inches, which is right here. And the narrowest area of the handle is at the finger guard right here at 0.84 inches. The width of the handle on average in the middle here is as well 0.84 inches, and the handle does have a flare getting wider from the frontal handle back to the pommel, so it does flare out in this direction. So what I find with that is that it does encourage your hand to stay locked into the handle very securely. Alright, and you can see there off to the side that we have a leather sheath for the low drag, and you do hear other reviewers and other owners of Condor knives talk about how good the leather sheaths are from Condor, and I would most certainly echo that with the low drag. You can see here it's got single stitching taco style leather sheath with some rivets, as well as a fire steel loop, and it does have a leather fold over belt loop which is riveted for a single position carry. And the leather is nice, thick, and quality leather for sure. The knife is a friction fit, and it does sit nice and deep in the sheath itself. So when it's snugged all the way down, you can see that the top of your belt would come right here, and so the overall carry on your hip is quite low, which is my preference. I really like a low carry for my blades on my hip, and I don't really feel them digging into my side at all. The friction fit is stock. I haven't done any water forming to tighten anything up or deform anything, and I have used this for really long hikes. I've worn it getting in and out of the truck. I've used it on mountain bike rides, on our camping trips, and it's held the knife in securely the entire time. I've had no concern about it bouncing out or popping around or anything like that. And if I hold the sheath down in the corner and give it good shakes, it started to come loose a little bit there. But overall, that's pretty secure. So the sheath is fantastic. I really like it a lot, and it's been a pleasure to be able to carry that around. Alright, we're going to run in a few size comparisons to the Condor low drag. First off, we're going to go with the Tops Bracamo fixed blade. Overall length of 10 inches, blade length 5 inches, handle length 5 inches, and blade stock on the Bracamo is 5 millimeters compared to the low drags 4 millimeters. And you can see, hopefully we'll get a good focus on those blade tips. Bracamo has quite, well, not quite a bit, but it does have a more acute tip compared to the very stout one on the low drag. And lastly, for size comparison, we have the Cold Steel Drop Forged Survivalist. Blade length of 8 inches, handle length 5 inches, overall length 13. And the Survivalist has a blade stock of 6 millimeters, again compared to the low drags 4 millimeters. And on the Survivalist, again more of an acute tip compared to the stout one on the low drag there. Alright, so let's get into how this blade handles and how this blade performs, which is the really exciting part about this knife. I'm not gonna lie, I love the low drag. It is an excellent cutting tool, and it's probably my most favorite tool I own out of any blade, any camping tool, period. I really like it. So initially, looking at the low drag, the handle in pictures can appear to be narrow height-wise and narrow width-wise, but because of how squared off the dimensions are, and because of the contouring that is shaped into the handle itself, and what little bit of belly it has there, and also taking into consideration the finger guard, I find that the handle is perfectly contoured and fits excellently in my hands. I have large size gloves, and generally, would take a bit more room than usual, than most people, for a knife to fill my hand comfortably, but this does an excellent job. I don't know what it is about it, but even though it may look small, it feels amazing to hold. So comfortable with the contouring, and the finger guard up here acts as an excellent point of indexing, so you always know where the blade is and you always know which way it is orientated. I do find that the micarta is an excellent quality micarta. It provides wonderful traction in hot conditions, in cool conditions, dry, wet. It feels really good on the skin, and is quite comfortable to hold for long periods of time. So yeah, excellent handle ergonomics, and excellent grip, super comfortable. One critique I do have about the handle is that I do feel like it could use a bit more of a pronounced beak on the back end here, on the pommel side, because it does have some chopping capabilities, and I do feel like it would be nice to, on a 3-finger hold, just help to lock that hand in there. Of course, using a lanyard would be super helpful for safety and helping that to stay locked in your hand as well, but I think that it could benefit a little bit more from having a bit more of a pronounced beak. But overall, handle comfort, some of the best I've ever had. Excellent on this. So for the blade performance, even compared to the Tops Bracamo and the Cold Steel Survivalist, which they have 5 mil and 6 mil blade stock. I found that the 4 mil blade stock on the Bracamo has proved plenty strong for every task that I've thrown at it, and I have not held back on using this blade heavily, and I don't find that it feels weak or inadequate in any way. The 4 mil blade stock is plenty strong. The full flat grind and cutting edge works like a laser. This did come razor sharp out of the box, paper slicing, in fact, with that convex edge and the full flat grind. And yeah, it works like a laser beam. This thing is an excellent slicing and cutting tool. Using it through a variety of materials, I have found that the edge stayed sharp for a long period of use without having to touch up the edge. I do find that the cutting geometry on the low drag is amazing. There is such precision and such control over this cutting edge from heavy use to light use that it feels like a fine, finely crafted cutting tool. Like, it does such an excellent job. This is probably the most precise knife that I've used, and I'm comparing that to my other fixed blades, kitchen knives, folding knives. It is so well tuned. I've used this for carving wood, whittling, feather sticks, some light chopping, and on that note, this overall weight of this feels light. It's not light to the point where you don't have confidence. There's enough weight there to help you have confidence in using this, but it is on the lighter side. So I would say that like, I've done some light chopping with it up to pieces, I'd say max 3 inches in diameter. After that, you're probably looking at putting in a lot of time and a lot of physical energy, putting extra power behind that blade to get through wood thicker than that. But below that, it does a pretty good job. I've used it for cutting rope, plastic strapping. I've used it for food prep, cutting meats, cheeses, breads, vegetables, and through all of those tasks, it has performed really well. Alright, so there are a couple critiques, I guess I'd say, that I have with this knife, and that starts with the cutting edge itself. So I have heard from other reviewers, other owners that have Condor knives, that their edges have either chipped or rolled, and in my case, the edge did roll in a couple of spots. I do believe that the edge rolled on the belly and about 3/4 of the way out, which is typically where you find yourself finding the meat and the most power when you're doing chopping. So the edge rolled a little bit in each spot there. It didn't really hamper the cutting performance. In fact, I would say that it didn't at all. But I did experience that the edge did roll a little bit. So what I did was I stropped the blade on sandpaper and then with leather to bring it back to true. So I did find that the edge was thinned out a little bit too much in a few spots. So I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of a convex edge. So what I've done is I have reprofiled this to a V final cutting edge, and I'm not really sure if you're able to catch it on the light. But I did reprofile it to a 25 degrees per side, and I did that, one, personal preference, two, I've had plenty success, I guess you could say, using a V final cutting edge on all the rest of my other fixed blades, and also serviceability. I have a little bit more confidence and skill sharpening back V grind compared to a convex edge. So that's what I've done here. Another critique I'd have is with the blade tip. I do feel like the blade tip is a bit too on the stout side. There is a lot of material carried right up to the very edge here, as you can see. And so what that means is that it's just not as precise or stabby as, say, that Bracamo I showed you, which I'll bring in here again. can see there that is still plenty enough material, but just the way that the grind is, it thins it out enough to be a little bit more effective than the low drag, as well as that really big drop forge survivalist by Cold Steel. And I mean, we have 6 mil blade stock, but just the way that they brought the edge right up to the tip there, you can see that it is pretty acute. And with these other two knives, I don't have any lack of confidence that the tip is going to be weak or fail in any sense. So I feel like there could be a change on the grind on the tip there. And as I mentioned earlier as well, I do feel like this could benefit from a slightly more pronounced beak on the back for those light chopping tasks. Alright, I already spoiled it earlier, but overall, how do I feel about this knife and this cutting tool? Well, I'd say that if something happened to it, somehow the knife failed or was damaged beyond repair, or if I ended up losing it, would I want to replace it, or would I be ready to move on and try something else? Well, the answer is I would replace this, no question. I love the way that it handles in the hand. I love how comfortable it is. I love how high performing the blade is. And at my earliest convenience, I'd be going out and I'd be finding a replacement for this right away if that were the case. This thing performs so well, in fact, that one of our extended camping trips that I had this as my main belt and camp knife, I processed so much wood that my offhand holding wood fatigued, and I ended up getting tennis elbow to the point where I couldn't even hold material in my left hand anymore. This hand, this arm, and this knife just kept going, and I couldn't even hold on to material anymore because of how fun it was to use for one, and how well performing it was that I just couldn't hold material anymore. I ended up having to brace things on the ground, on an angle, on other logs, just to be able to keep using it. And I did want to keep using it because it is so fun. I love the way that it looks, and love the sheath. It is just an excellent package. I think Condor really nailed it out of the park with their low drag. You know, like I mentioned, maybe I wish it kind of had a little bit more weight to it, but if that ended up meaning that I was going to sacrifice the precision that this thing has, I would prefer to keep the precision, because there's always bigger, beefier knives that you can use if you want to go beating on pieces of wood. This is excellent just as it is. So other than a few critiques, I would most certainly highly recommend the low drag. It is an excellent cutting tool, comfortable, high performing, and good looking in my opinion. So that's it, guys. Thanks for joining me, and we'll catch you next time.